It's often mythologized that the idea of twisted metal was born during the frustrating duration of a traffic jam. It would be very cool to make a fighting game with vehicles in which we demolish the other cars with missiles and machine guns, and we imagined this before people shot themselves on the road. But at that time, it sounded like an action movie. At the admittance of David Jaffe himself at the end of the quote, the want to solve everyday inconveniences with violence has a very different and troubling context nowadays, but it's still a sort of tempting taboo within fiction, and one with a pyrrhic reality that acts as the very groundwork for the mentality of the unforgettable lore and universe of the Twisted Metal games. Twisted Metal is an annual tournament in which anyone with a viable vehicle can compete in a demolition derby to the death, trading bullets, explosives, and missiles with the aim of being the lone winner. Bestowed the grand prize, an audience with the tournament's master, Calypso, and the opportunity to ask him for any wish their heart desires. With this setup in mind, Twisted Metal's story feels so accessible because the wish fulfillment is so broad. If you can sit behind the wheel of a car with machine guns mounted on it, you can compete in Calypso's game, which is what draws in the diverse figures of the series, from army veterans to criminals to thrill-seeking degenerates. Anyone can be a Twisted Metal driver. No superpowers, physical training, or particular experience is altogether advantageous in a game where you're basically crashing your car better than everyone else. Anyone can play and anyone can win, which is no small part of how fun the cast of Twisted Metal is. Considering how human it is to want things, there's a good chance you relate to at least one or more of the Twisted drivers. Whether seeking money, attention, or vindictive achievement, no matter how deranged a driver seems, they all come off as distinctly human. You may initially fail to believe someone would risk their life in such a deadly game for a souped-up car or a cheap thrill, but the fact that these characters so passionately seek these things in the first place is what makes them suit the mold of Twisted Metal so well. A video game that's so addicting because of how fast-paced, heart-pounding, and versatile it can be. Considering the massive risks people will take for clout and prizes nowadays, risking their bodies and welfare for YouTube and TikTok views, it really wouldn't surprise me if Twisted Metal were a broadly popular, if not controversial sport if it were real. Between monster trucks, hearses, and tricked-out race cars, there's a vehicle for anyone representing their driver through their playstyle, from the fast and cunning Mr. Grimm to the up-close and burly Mr. Slam. This is arguably only second to the coup de grace of each character, their arcade ending, wherein they win the game and ask for their wish, and as you can perhaps guess, Calypso isn't any kind of benevolent genie. The chieftain of a careful what you wish for ideal, Calypso prides himself on his capability to exploit double meanings and careless wording to punish the driver making the wish in mind. A wish for the ability to fly causes the drivers Mike and Stu to ecstatically leap from the rooftops, only to fall to their deaths, leaving Calypso behind them as he brandishes their first-class plane tickets. While race car driver Amanda Watts was given the absurdly fast race car of her dreams, ignorant it would reach speeds that break reality, stranding her where she cannot return. Whether by indulging the worst in his recipient or doing anything within his powers to damn them, Calypso's modus operandi is that of a velvet-tongued trickster who takes sadistic glee in turning the desires of his victims onto their head. While he's changed a good deal over multiple iterations, his MO as a living monkey's paw remains consistent, as is the often horrifying manner in which Calypso bestows his prizes. Stretching an aspiring actor's skin so the world could quite literally know his face, giving an aging combatant the body of a 20-year-old but not the head to match, those who fall victim to Calypso's tricks are often subjected to truly stomach-wrenching body horror, though on the other hand, sometimes all Calypso needs is to lead someone on their way to their path to ruin, such as when he gave the architect Simon Whittlebone the resources necessary to finish his life's work in the form of the world's tallest tower, and Calypso did nothing to coax Simon to the top of his own tower and cry his pride to the heavens, only to lose his footing and fall countless stories to a gruesome demise. There are exceptions to Calypso's wrath, born of the asker's own cleverness, or a nature not even Calypso can seem to resist respecting, yet even those stories can have melancholy tones. Axel, a man forced inside a two-wheeled torture device, asks Calypso for the strength to confront the man who damned him to this nightmarish existence, his own father. Calypso clearly grants a wish in some way, but what I love about this particular ending is the ambiguity of it all. As Axel talks down to his father for the first time, and mutilates himself as he tears his body free of the device, before disappearing. Did Calypso grant Axel the physical strength to do this? Or the emotional fortitude to stand up to his father? Perhaps Calypso did nothing and let Axel's newfound courage, begotten from his Twisted Metal victory, carry him towards his desires. Regardless, the sight of a man declaring himself free at the cost of his own arms is one that stuck with me as a solemn outcome of violence and anger that feeds the fire of Twisted Metal. As you may recall from the famed traffic jam anecdote at the start of the video, Twisted Metal isn't just a literal narrative about wish fulfillment, but one in the fantasy of urban decay, the desire to wipe out modern civilization and everything wrong with it and let a new world order supplant it, to blow up every gas guzzler taking up space on the road to smithereens with no fear of consequences. This is what Twisted Metal indulges and constantly displays the folly of, as most characters' desires are also bred from the shortcomings of the modern world. Bruce Cochran, the driver of Thumper, wants to put an end to his days engaging in gang violence by reigning supreme, only to find that his violent crusade leaves him with nothing to rule, while the police officers driving the cruiser Outlaw constantly seek ways to rid the world of crime, but are constantly undermined. These characters get to engage in what is to some a devious violent fantasies, but the sometimes terrifying results of their actions are never far out of reach. And with this in mind, Twisted Metal stands as a lesson in indulging these desires, how insane violence can feel really good in the moment, but rarely justifies itself. The outcome of disappointment following going out on a limb such as this is what tethers the description and urban sensitization of Twisted Metal back to the theme of want. It is desire and selfish wishing that brings strife to the characters. I don't think it's any coincidence that Calypso holds the Twisted Metal competition every Christmas Eve, and that a handful of the games embrace that aesthetic as if to say the wish you're chasing is the gift-wrapped present, and what lies beneath is often malicious and terrifying. Twisted Metal is all about distorted desire, and that's represented incredibly well by the series' mascot, Sweet Tooth, the famous serial killer clown who drives the series' famed ice cream truck, which he uses outside of the tournament to lure his victims. An ice cream truck is a perfect symbol to represent awaiting desires, something children rush to hoping to be rewarded with sweets, but as Twisted Metal teaches us time and time again, what's waiting for us within our wishes can be a horror we can never anticipate, as waiting inside the truck driven by Sweet Tooth the Clown is the depraved killer Needles Kane, who indulges his own proclivities through brutal murder. The cherry on top of the Sweet Tooth sundae is how consistently he represents this mentality for better or worse. Being a beast of base desire, Sweet Tooth rarely has anything on his mind besides what he wants to do next. His carnal lust for blood and claiming another victim. This has behooved him and damned him multiple times. He doesn't overthink his choices, which has really screwed him over when his wish to be reunited with his daughter locked him in a coffin with her corpse. But when given the chance between having his flaming head cured or having to never kill again, he simply sides with his easy wants and kills Calypso in response. It's all of this that makes a big clown who loves killing and ice cream such a perfect face character for the series. He's a character who follows his gut and is utterly unpredictable that way, and this sets him apart from his peers as well as draws him closer to them. In the game of Twisted Metal, everyone is brought down to Sweet Tooth's level. No matter how little pleasure they posture, they're operating on a lust for their goal and seeking a prize thoroughly and violently. Suddenly righteous cops and generals don't have a moral leg to stand on against Sweet Tooth, considering their victory, no matter how noble, would result in them having just as much blood on their hands as he has. This is a point of view we see in spades in the installment Twisted Metal Black, a noticeably dark in tone sequel where through cryptic clues the player gradually learns that this tonal outlier chronicles the events of any given game, but exclusively from Sweet Tooth's point of view, distorting every character into a macabre misfit like himself. Twisted Metal Black frames every character as being broken out of an asylum, punctuating that Sweet Tooth sees everyone as just as insane as he is. Supposedly noble wishes a mere shield that breaks down in the face of their futile folly. This recolors even the most outlandish Twisted Metal competitor back in the colorful universe, as if Sweet Tooth is present within all of them. A sort of literal reality for the driver of the vehicle Roadkill, Marcus Kane. A disheveled homeless man, Marcus's chief traits surround his insistence that all of Twisted Metal is a dream. Viewing his character-narrated bio on the character select screen shows an abrasive and grim shattering of the fourth wall. I know the truth, you freak. You sit back in your living room with your little video game console and play. But I know what's happening. I can see you. They think I'm crazy. But you'll find out I'm the only one who's sane! In a strange oxymoron, Marcus may be one of the game's most unhinged drivers, and yet he recognizes the madness most everyone else seems to accept that is living in the world of Twisted Metal, and his wish is an escape. Upon Marcus's victory, he begs Calypso to awaken from his dream, and Calypso almost bizarrely obliges. In a flash of light, Marcus awakens in a hospital bed, surrounded by other comatose combatants with whom he apparently shared a massive car accident which gave them all the same shared nightmare that only Marcus has awakened from. Marcus is embraced by his family and lives happily ever after. But Twisted Metal Head-On, seemingly apropos of nothing, presents a different reality where we learn Marcus asks once more to wake up from his nightmare, only to learn that he is in fact a dissociative personality of Sweet Tooth, explaining his restrained manic tendencies and gift for vehicular combat. Admittedly, this plot point feels like there's just a need for a sting to cliffhang this particular installment, and to be frank, I'd be surprised if anyone had any idea how to follow this plot point up, or how it connects to previous installments. What it paints beautifully, though, is the dynamic Calypso carries, as someone who simply gives the winner what they want, even if they regret his painting of an entire reality for them.
Twisted Metal is as real as you want it to be, and apparently you want it to be very real.
Marcus wanted to be free from the violence of his nightmare at first, but over 2 more installments he fought more and more, and something awakened in him that Calypso fully brought to the surface by exposing a violence like Sweet Tooth's as an integral part of him. The TLDR here is that I don't think either of Marcus's endings were ever simultaneously a reality per se. I don't think he walked into either tournament with these truths to walk back to and wake up from. Rather, these are outcomes granted by Calypso, granting his wish to make sense of Marcus's scattered, aimless existence. He gives Marcus a purpose, just as he fails to do for his own daughter, Krista. The driver of Grasshopper, Krista lashes out against her father, angry that he's essentially burned the world to a crisp with Twisted Metal, and no matter how much Calypso genuinely loves Krista, he acts as though the matter is out of his hands, as if he can't just stop destroying the world with his tournament. Krista wishes to end Twisted Metal, and Calypso responds by locking his daughter in a sleep where she'll spend the foreseeable future dreaming of her father, because he can't bear to watch her reckon with how topsy-turvy the world has become thanks to him. And as I write this, what leaps out to me from Krista's story is the strangely relatable sort of millennial ennui, the notion that it's unfair we live in a world so broken by those at the top who could stop it, to the point that as a millennial with peers in the same generation, I see the phrase, "I never asked to be born," used a lot to describe this particular powerlessness a lot. Krista just wants to end the fighting, destruction, and pain, and Calypso, for someone so pained and capable by his daughter's grief, can only handwave her concerns as anger at something with necessity that's dubious at best. Calypso's 2 gestures of bending reality consist of escaping someone from his reality with a never-ending dream, and transforming someone so they can adjust to it and thrive. But he could bestow neither of these to his own daughter. The characters of Twisted Metal are those willing to go to any extreme to absolve that inner conflict, to put aside standards and civility and fight tooth and nail for what you want, because the rest of the world has gone mad, and really, that's the necessary evil Calypso supplies. Who's to say the wicked killer Dollface wouldn't find some other means to kill her way to the top of the modeling circuit? Or that Cousin Eddie wouldn't just kill in an unsanctioned setting for his high-tech RV? Calypso is giving everyone's violence and urges an outlet and a meaning, and it's this confidence in himself that makes him such a compelling villain, and what makes the blazing violence and cathartic rage of these characters so addicting, and Twisted Metal so easy and fun to invest in. And this isn't me saying you should throw your cares aside and pursue arson and vandalism just because a video game makes it fun, but exploring characters doing that in spades is definitely a treat that suits my sweet tooth.